Curt Flood, the man who stood up for baseball. We have all heard the names: Alex Rodriguez, Giancarlo Stanton, and Albert Pujols, who have made millions off free agency, and many who are about to make millions just this year. But none of this is possible without the efforts of Curt Flood. Curt Flood was born on January 18, 1938. He was born the youngest of 6 children. When he was 2 years old, Curt and his family moved to Oakland, California. He grew up both as an artistic and athletic child. After graduating high school, Curt was signed to the Cincinnati Red Wings for $4,000. He was then traded to the St. Louis Cardinals and played 11 seasons for the Cardinals. His career batting average was .293. He hit 85 home runs and won the Gold Glove Award 7 times. He also won 2 World Series, one in 1964 and one in 1967. He was then traded to the Philadelphia Phillies after the 1969 season. The Cardinals traded Flood along with Tim McCarver, Byron Brown, and Joe Herner to the Phillies for Dick Allen, Jerry Johnson, and Cookie Rojas. But this trade was turned out to be different from all trades before or since. This time, one of the biggest stars refused to go. On December 24th, 1969, Curt sent a letter to the Commissioner of Baseball, Bowie Kuhn, which read, "After 12 years in the major leagues, I do not feel I am a piece of property to be bought and sold irrespectful of my wishes. I believe that any system which produces that result violates my basic rights as a citizen and is inconsistent with the laws in the United States of America. It is my desire to play baseball in 1970, and I am capable of playing. I have received a contract offer from the Philadelphia club, but I believe I have the right to consider offers from other clubs before making any decisions. I therefore request that you make known to all major league clubs my feeling in this matter, and I advise of them the availability of the 1970 season. Sincerely yours, Curt Flood." Commissioner Kuhn denied his request, citing the reserve clause in his contract. In 1969, players were still bound to a team for life by the so-called reserve clause. The reserve clause meant that a player was team's property unless the team chose to trade or release him. His first big league team would be his only big league team for his entire career. A player's only recourse was retirement. Even though his request was denied, Curt refused to go. Curt knew it was time to take a stand against the baseball owners. He went to his personal lawyer and to Marvin Miller, founder and executive director of the Players Association. In a July 2011 interview, Miller stated that Flood's mind was already made up when he came to him. "I told him that given the court's history of bias towards the owners and their monopolies, he didn't have a chance in hell of winning. More important than that, I told him, even if he won, he'd never get anything out of it. He'd never get a job in baseball again." Flood asked Miller if it would benefit other players. "I told him yes, and those to come." He said, "That's good enough for me." When Miller realized that Flood understood the odds are against him, he was still determined to go ahead with the case, he told him. On January 16, 1970, Curt Flood filed a lawsuit in New York federal court against Commissioner Bowie Kuhn, the president of the American National League, and of all 24 teams in the Major League Baseball organization. This sent shockwaves throughout baseball, sports, and the world. Many people believe since he was well paid, he had no right to bring this lawsuit. In an interview with Howard Cosell, at the time, Curt uttered the famous line, "A well-paid slave is nonetheless a slave." After a U.S. District Court reject Flood's claim in August of 1970, the case went to U.S. Supreme Court. Despite the support of such great players such as Jackie Robinson and Hank Greenberg, no active players agreed to testify on his behalf. Flood lost the case with a 5-3 decision with Justice Lewis Powell withdrawing due to conflict of interest. The court decision stated that yes, Flood should have the right to be free agent, but that baseball's antitrust exemption could only be removed by an act of Congress, and that free agency for players should attain through collective bargaining. Because of the pressure that Flood's suit brought to baseball owners in 1973, the Players Association was able to negotiate a new agreement that included the rule, the 10.5 rule, the 10/5 rule, also known as the Curt Flood rule, which gave players with 10 years of major league experience, including 5 years with their current club, the right to veto a trade. Miller and the union were able to bargain for binding arbitration on grievances. Finally, in 1976, when pitchers Andy Messersmith and Dave Nelly agreed to play a season without a contract, arbitrator Pete Seals ruled them free agents. Overnight, the reserve clause had ruled baseball virtually since the beginning collapsed. Just as Martin Miller predicted, Curt Flood would not see any benefit from his lawsuit. He was, in essence, blackballed from baseball. He sat out the 1970 season and only played 13 games for Washington in 1971. He retired and never played baseball again. Following his retirement, he lived for several years in Barcelona, Spain. And on the island of Mauritius, he operated a bar. Curt was a very talented artist. His portrait of Martin Luther King Jr. hung for more than 30 years in the living room of King's widow, Soretta Scott King. He returned to the game as answer for Oakland A's for the 1978 season. Curt Flood received the NAACP Jackie Robinson Award for contributions to black athletes. In 1994, in what could have been perceived as perhaps the most satisfying moment of his life, he gave a speech on solidarity to the players as they prepared to go on strike. The players gave him a standing ovation. This was almost 25 years to the day that he had announced his suit against baseball. Unfortunately, decades of smoking and drinking caught up to him. In early 1995, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. The Players Association paid for all of his medical bills. He died 2 days after his 59th birthday on January 20th, 1997. Jesse Jackson's funeral eulogy stands as his epitaph. Baseball didn't change Curt Flood. Curt Flood changed baseball. He fought the good fight. On October 27, 1998, President Bill Clinton signed the Curt Flood Act. The Curt Flood Act allowing MLBs to file antitrust suits, making official what had already been agreed upon through the collective bargaining agreement. Curt Flood took a stand against Major League Baseball by refusing to go to Philadelphia when he was traded after the 1969 season. As he stated in his letter to the commissioner, "I do not feel I am a piece of property to be bought and sold irrespectful of my wishes." After they refused his request, he took them to court. Although he did not win his case, he set the groundwork for future baseball players. He knew he wouldn't benefit from his actions, but he did it anyway for the players that would come after him.